The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kristen Matson from ORU. Welcome to our second webinar in our three-part webinar series. Just to make sure that everyone can hear me, if you'll go ahead and do a sound check by introducing yourselves within the chat. So tell me your name, where you work, what you do, all of that fun stuff. I'll give you a moment to do that, and this will also help you get acclimated to how to use the chat box. We are going to use the chat box for any questions. You all are currently in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar, and I will unmute you as questions arise if needed. But just so the sound quality is the best it can possibly be for the recording, and yes, we are recording this and we'll send the recording out to you all, we keep everyone on mute. So go ahead and use that chat box to introduce yourselves. All right, thank you guys so much. Raphael, Tammy, Joshua, Rodney, Joel, I see all of you guys have been able to introduce yourselves within the chat. That's fantastic. We've got a few more people who've just joined us. So for those who didn't hear, we're all introducing ourselves in the chat box. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, this is part 2 of a 3-part webinar series that we're offering for Insight Human Services staff and their partners. So the first webinar that we did was a rehash of our in-person training. So for those who were able to be a part of the in-person training and or the first webinar, you had a little bit of an introduction to using Facebook and Instagram as part of your social media strategy. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about Twitter and Snapchat. As you guys recall, we provided some evaluation forms during the in-person training, and Twitter and Snapchat were some of the other channels that you all were really interested in learning more about. So we're going to do a brief overview today. We've got an hour and a half that we can be on this webinar, and so I plan on giving you as much information as I can within that time, but also allowing you an opportunity to ask questions. And again, if you have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and type them into the chat box, and I will get to them as I can. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and dive right into the webinar for today. And again, I'm Kristen Matson. Jennifer, who was on our webinar last time and was also part of our in-person training, is not going to be with us today, but if you miss her voice, she will definitely be on webinar number 3, which is all about Facebook advertising. So Twitter. Really interesting to note here, and if you guys aren't Twitter users, it's okay. Twitter is really different from Facebook, from Instagram. It's really been traditionally more about more used as a broadcast channel and more about giving out bits of news and information rather than having really deep conversations. Although I will say that this is really changing. Twitter has introduced some new features that have really increased engagement, and we'll talk about that. But people, I like to always throw up these demographics because it gives you a sense about who's on Twitter from a national perspective. And again, if you were in any of our previous trainings, you will have heard Jennifer and I preach over and over again not to rely on this data. You really want to make sure that you're asking your audience what channels they're on. And if they are on those channels, then maybe consider using them as part of your strategy. So if you go out there and you realize that your audience is not on Twitter, then this probably isn't going to be a channel that you're going to want to invest a lot of time in, if at all. But again, Twitter is very different from Facebook and Instagram, more of a broadcast network. People are jumping on Twitter and jumping off Twitter, quickly scrolling through their timelines multiple times per day, as opposed to Facebook users who spend a longer chunk of time on the platform each time they visit. So some interesting facts for you all about Twitter, because I just love facts and I just find some of these things fascinating. There are over 500 million tweets each day. The average Twitter user has 208 followers. And Caitlyn Jenner is actually the person who holds the record. She was the first person she reached 1 million followers the fastest. It only took 4 hours when she created her account to reach that 1 million follower mark. So I think that's pretty incredible. So let's talk about your Twitter profile. And we'll see if this wants to change. There we go. All right, so your Twitter profile looks a little bit like this. This is a slightly outdated graphic, but it still very much looks the same on Twitter. So your username, let's talk about that. So this number 1 here. So when you look at your profile on Twitter, if you've created an account and you look at the profile, this is what it's going to look like. And your username is going to appear here. And that's really known as your handle. So that's what you see with the @ symbol before it. And that's how people find you on Twitter. That can actually be up to 15 characters. And you can have a different name. Your name can be different from your actual username. I recommend that they be the same if you can. Sometimes people aren't able to secure the exact username that they want, the exact handle that they want. So sometimes those are slightly different, but people are going to find you by that handle, that username, that @ symbol. So you really want to think strategically when you're signing up for an account, what that looks like. So with your profile photo, that's going to appear here, number 2. They call this on Twitter, they call that your avatar. So even though it doesn't have to be a cartoon character, which is traditionally what an avatar is, they call it an avatar. They have recently increased the size of this photo. So a few things that you want to keep in mind. You want to make sure that the photo visually represents your brand. And even though they've increased the size of this photo, it's still rather small picture. So you want to make sure if you're using a logo or something like that, that it's still recognizable and still readable in that small little space, especially when you're using Twitter on mobile, which a lot of users are. So play around with that. But I would recommend once you decide on a profile photo, you keep that profile photo consistent. So don't change it out all the time because you really want to have that brand recognition. Number 3, your bio. So you've got 160 characters to tell people what makes you special and why they should follow you. Really important here, you want to make sure that you're including your location, your city, your county, however you identify yourself. If you have any specific business hours, and if you have a link to your website, you want to include that. So Twitter, a couple years ago, put out a header image. And that is similar. So that's right here, number 4. That's similar to Facebook's cover photo. So this is something, and Twitter used to have a background photo, but they've swapped it out for this header image. And so we really want to recommend that you, unlike the profile picture, which you don't want to swap out all the time, we recommend that you swap out your header image periodically to spotlight different campaigns that you're running, or if there's some sort of an event. I'm thinking Red Ribbon Week. So creating different header images for those different things. And then, on your profile, this is where you're going to see in the middle, this is where you're going to see the bulk of your tweets and replies. And then this is now media right here. So that's photos and videos. You can also get a sense of how many tweets you've had, how many people you're following, how many people follow you back, how many likes you've given, that sort of thing. There's also this option right here, which you also have on Facebook, to pin a tweet to the top of your profile. So it'll be the first thing someone sees when they go to your profile. So this is really something that you're going to want to use if there is some sort of event that you're trying to highlight, or some really important piece of news. Maybe you guys were in the news, you had a story about you, something you are really proud of that you want to make sure that everyone has a chance to see. Well, that's something that you can do, is to pin those tweets to the top. So before we start talking about some different things, what to tweet, when to tweet, all about Twitter's timeline, I thought I'd stop here and pull up my Twitter profile so I can just show you a few things and a few mechanics on how Twitter works for those of you who are not Twitter users. So let me do that. Let's switch to Twitter. Let me make sure. Yep, you guys are able to see this. So I pulled up my profile, and this is one. I'm not active on this Twitter profile. Jennifer and I constantly joke all the time that we do so much social media for our clients that we rarely, when we get home, we don't want to touch social media on our personal channels. So feel free to follow me. You're not going to see a whole lot of activity on this profile, but yep, there I am. So again, this is my profile that we're viewing. So I've got my name here, Kristen. I've got my username at kkmat13. I've got my little bio here, a link to my LinkedIn page. It tells you when I joined Twitter. And then you have a link to all the photos and videos that I have uploaded. You also can see how many tweets I've had, not so many since joining in January 2016, how many people I'm following versus following me back, likes, lists, and moments are all different things. So down here, this is what we consider the Twitter timeline. So in Facebook, it's called a news feed. So when I'm looking at my profile, it's showing me right now all of my tweets. So ever since I joined, all of my tweets are going to be shown here. And anytime that I have retweeted, replied to people, mentioned people, you can see all of that information as you scroll down. Media shows you, again, any sort of pictures or videos I have uploaded over time. So let's quickly, so if you guys want to ever edit your profile, this is how you will do that. With this button, you've got a lot of options here. Twitter also makes some really good recommendations based on the accounts you currently follow in the activity, things that you do and like on Twitter. They'll recommend other people to follow based on that. And then it also shows trends, things that it thinks you might be interested in, different hashtags, different conversations, news stories that are happening. So dig into here. And again, this is all based on your activity on Twitter. So that's a quick glance of the profile screen. Let's quickly go to home. So this is going to be where you see all of the tweets from people and brands that you currently follow on Twitter. So, and you'll notice there are a lot of ads that pop up, so you can spot ads in your timeline by that little promoted sign. So we can go down here. If you want to interact with somebody else's tweet, you have several different options. You now have this reply feature where you can reply directly to them. Notice down here you can add photos or videos. You can add a GIF. You can add a poll. You can add your location. And over here you have the opportunity to add emojis. You can also retweet this to all of your followers. You can, and I always recommend adding a comment here so you can add that extra context to explain to your followers why you thought this was interesting. You can like the post, the tweet. And then you can send this in a direct message to any number of people. All right, so that's how you interact with other people's tweets. You also have some different options here. So you'll notice this little caret for more. So you can do a few things. You can mute Nancy Grace. You can block Nancy Grace. You can report it. You can copy the link to the tweet so that you can send it to somebody else. So a lot of different things that you can do with other people's tweets. Now, I get the question from people who aren't really big Twitter users. They're like, okay, so how do I find people to start following? Well, you use this little search bar up here. And so let's say you really like CNN. So you can just start typing to try to find their account. And you'll notice this little blue check mark. That's like the verified check mark on Facebook that Jennifer mentioned. So this is how you know that this is legitimately CNN. So you can click on them to open up their profile. And then there's this button right here that says follow. So I can follow them. Now it says I'm following, or I can hover over if I made a mistake and wanted to unfollow. You've also, from everybody's profile, you have some of those additional options again for muting them, blocking them, reporting them. If you want to turn on mobile notifications, meaning anytime this account tweets, you will get a notification on your mobile phone. That's something that you can do. And we talked about that with Instagram, if you recall, as a strategy, something that you can do to encourage people to get your content is to encourage them to turn on mobile notifications for you. All right, so let's go back to home. So the next question I get from people who are like, I've never been on Twitter. How does this all work? Okay, so we went over following people. Now, how do I actually tweet? Because on Facebook, we're so used to, the way that it is, Twitter is just set up a little bit differently. So you'll notice up here, you've got a couple different options. So we've got this what's happening, where you can actually tweet from here. There's also this tweet button, which brings it up. So from your screen, you can click on that. And you'll notice, just like with the replies to other people's tweets, you have a few different options when you're composing your tweets. So you can add photos or videos. You can add a GIF, which is just a little animated video in a loop. You can add a poll. You can tag your location. And you can add emojis. Also within tweets, you can actually tag people or mention them by typing in their username, their @ symbol. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to compose a tweet, and I want to show you, pay attention down here to this little wheel, because this is counting our characters. And Twitter just recently allowed everyone the opportunity. They increased their character count limit from 140 to 280 characters. So now you have a lot more space to type out what you want to say. So, hi everyone, currently training awesome people in social media strategy, looking at Twitter and Snapchat today. So you can see that this wheel is changing and the little blue line is moving. It's sort of our countdown. I'm going to copy this just real quick so we can get some extra characters. You'll notice that as we get closer to that 280 character limit, we start getting a countdown here. I will say that you can add links and do all of that fun stuff. A link is going to eat up 23 characters, no matter how long or short it is. So keep that in mind as you are typing. And we can mention someone if we want. And another reason to keep your username short, because that eats up character counts. So shorter usernames are better. Twitter also introduced this new feature. It's called Twitter Threads. So you can actually, if you have some different thoughts, you need more than 280 characters to get your point across, or you have an update that you want to add, this is where you can do that by clicking that plus sign to add another tweet. And so these sort of, when you publish them, they're interconnected on your timeline. I do want to show you real quick before we bounce back to the PowerPoint, a really clever way that I think someone has, and it was actually Twitter, has used this thread option. So we're going to discard that. All right, so let's find Twitter, because Twitter has so many different accounts. Because I want to show you how they did this thread, which I thought was, again, really clever. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, okay. So you'll see show this thread. Okay, so this is what they did. So this was the original tweet, and they were giving an update about Twitter. So they said, see what's happening with 3 updated ways to find and follow news and events on Twitter. And then they list each of those different updates with a check mark. But then they added a thread. And so their first thing that they talked about was an improved format for moments, which are like stories. So their first thread that they added was them going into more detail about the improved moments format. And then they added another thread that talked about their second point from the original tweet, which was the Organized Explore tab. And then finally, they went into more detail about timeline and news. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to introduce some topics and utilize that option for threads. Anytime, so let's go back to home, because this is sort of where the action is. And again, on the home screen, you see these trends for you and who to follow. Also want to point out, you've got this notifications tab up here. So anytime somebody mentions you, or you've got tweets that you have elected to get notifications for, or Twitter thinks that you might be interested in some of these tweets, then it provides you with some notifications. You can look at all or the mentions. So these are tweets that you were directly mentioned in. So somebody tagged you in their tweet, essentially. You also have a messages folder, an inbox, for all of your direct messages that you have sent and received. All right, so now that you've sort of seen Twitter, let's go back to our PowerPoint and let's talk about some strategic ways to utilize the platform in your strategy. All right, so let's talk about what you want to tweet. Okay, so again, Twitter's that perfect place for a quick press bulletin style news flash tweet. So think about organizational announcements. So major announcements to maybe some small details about a 5K event. You definitely want to keep your audience in the know. If you're going to be closed, if you're a brick and mortar business where you've got people who are coming in your door for services, and you're going to be closed on a certain day, you might want to use Twitter to let your followers know that your hours are different or you're closed on one day. And again, you've got 280 characters now, which is really cool. So that was a change that they did last year. And I love Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO. He was recently interviewed back in February, and I want to read this quote to you all because I think it's really fascinating to me as a social media strategist. He said, and just to remind people of why we did it, expanded the character count, one of the things that we're seeing is that people would bounce up against the 140 character limit consistently and actually abandon tweets completely. So people were getting so frustrated because they couldn't get their thought out because they only had 140 characters. And the whole reason that there was only this 140 character limit to begin with is because tweets were originally sent via SMS, short message service, text message, where, if you didn't have a smartphone back in the day, you might remember that, those text messages all had character limits of 160. So he goes on to say, after they realized that people would actually abandon their tweets because they would get so frustrated, he says, so we wanted to experiment with giving them a little bit more room. And one of the things we're watching for is to see if the average tweet size would go up. And as a result of expanding the character counts, it hasn't. So that's so interesting that even though they've expanded to 280 characters, they have not seen an increase in the average length of tweets. But he goes on to say that the percentage of users who abandon tweets has declined while overall user engagement has increased. So because of their change, they're seeing a lot more retweets, they're seeing a lot more mentions, and they're also seeing people get more followers and return more often. So I think this is so fascinating to me because this is why I say Twitter's sort of changing to be more conversational. And I think that one of the major reasons is this shift to allow more conversation. You've got more characters to be able to get your message across, to reply to people. You're no longer, limited to when you retweet someone's content, you have to worry about how many characters they used when adding your own context. So you've got a whole new 280 characters when you retweet somebody's content now, which is so great. So think about how you can also incorporate quotes or calls to action in Twitter. So Jennifer and I always get this question: when do I post? When do I tweet? So with as always, our answer is when your followers are online. But that is slowly changing as the algorithms get more robust. But we want to encourage you to go to Tweeria.com, and this will help you identify those peak tweeting times. So it shows you when your followers are online, and so when you can find those peaks and you can determine, how often you want to tweet within those times. And it used to be that we would recommend that you could send the same tweet multiple times a day, because Twitter's feed used to be in reverse. Twitter's timeline used to be reverse chronological order, so you would see the most recent tweets first, and that's changed a little bit. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But, so we really recommend that, maybe you send the same tweet in a slightly revised way a couple of times a day, but you definitely don't want to be tweeting too often throughout the day. We always say try something, check your analytics, and then revise your strategy. But I would recommend no more than 1 to 4 tweets in a day. So let's see. Oh, a few things I want to mention about when to tweet is that early morning tweets tend to receive the most clicks on average. So likes and clicking on stories to read more. And then evenings and late night tweets receive the most retweets. So really interesting there. So think about what your strategy is. If you're going for retweets, you definitely want to tweet in the evening and late nights. And if you are just going for awareness, content, consumption, clicks in the morning is when you want to post. And really interesting, the most popular time to tweet is actually between noon and 1 p.m. So maybe think about not tweeting around that time, because you're going to be competing with other people. So with Twitter, you have, just like with the other channels, you can actually pre-schedule your tweets. You can use Hootsuite, TweetDeck. There are a variety of tools that are available to schedule tweets. So let's talk more about Twitter's timeline, because again, Twitter used to be a reverse chronological feed, meaning you'd see the most recent tweets at the top of your timeline. And now, since a couple of years ago, Twitter released an algorithmic feed. So now they're showing you posts that they think you like. So tweets are now sorted based on relevancy, and they consider that the tweets that appear on your feed at the top, they consider those the best tweets for you out of all of the people and brands that you follow, all the accounts that you follow, and all of their tweets. In the recent past, they collect what they consider are those best tweets and show those first. So some things that influence the algorithm: overall engagement relative to other tweets from the same account, how recent the tweet is, how often you engage with the author, the time you spent reading tweets by that author, even if you didn't engage, and attachments that you tend to engage with. So you definitely, there's also something called In Case You Missed It. So In Case You Missed It is actually something that they introduced probably a year and a half ago. And so this is sort of a separate feature to recap some of those best tweets that you may have missed if it's been a while since you last logged into Twitter. And this may not always appear at the top of your timeline, and it's not always obvious how many tweets are sort of rolled up into that In Case You Missed It section. So as you scroll down, if it's been a while, you'll see this. If you're an avid Twitter user where you're logging in multiple times a day, you're not going to see this because you're on it constantly. So this is, again, a way to recap some of those best tweets. All right, so what does that mean for you? So since Twitter has this algorithmic timeline now, you are going to have to work to increase your engagement rate. So that increases the potential number of people that see your content. I'll show you where you can find this data in Twitter in just a second. So this is your analytics data for tweets, and this is just a screenshot of some of the tweets that I've pulled and the analytics from those. But basically, I want to talk about a few of these metrics. So engagement rate is really what we say is the most important. And so engagement rate is out of everyone who saw your tweet, what percentage of people did something with it? So they calculate this by taking the number of engagements and dividing it by impressions. And Twitter counts engagement anytime someone clicks anywhere on the tweet. So this includes if they click to retweet, if they click to reply, if they follow, if they favorite it, link, if they click on a link, if they click on a hashtag that you've put in the tweet, if they've clicked on the picture that you may have included or the video that you included, if they click on your username, if they click on your profile photo, so all of these different things count as engagement within Twitter. And when you're measuring that engagement on Twitter, you definitely want to look at all different types of engagement separately and see how users are engaging, because how they're engaging matters just as much as how much they're engaging. So to give you an example, maybe your content is getting a lot of clicks because people are looking at maybe you're sharing a lot of links and people are reading the articles, but you're not seeing a lot of likes or shares. That's something that you definitely want to know, and you want to see, and try to make predictions. Are people not liking or sharing this because, because of the type of content it is? Maybe you see some trends. Maybe you see that people are more likely to like or retweet photos versus text-only posts or things like that. One of the things that was really interesting that we saw when we were doing a lot of in-depth trainings with anti-drug coalitions is that when we looked at their Twitter analytics data, we saw, and the same thing really went for Facebook too, we saw sort of a lot of clicks and a lot of people reading the articles that they would share, but not a lot of likes. And we sort of hypothesized that had to do with the fact that they were substance abuse organizations, and they may not have wanted their friends or followers to know that they are liking some of those posts. A lot of people who follow anti-drug coalitions, you've got a lot of parents who may want that content because maybe their child or their spouse is struggling with addiction, and so they typically don't want everyone to know that they're consuming that content for one reason or another. So that's definitely something that you'll want to pay attention to when you look at your analytics. And again, I'll show you where to access this in just a second. All right. So again, Twitter considers engagement anytime someone clicks anywhere on the tweet. All right, so let me show you, before we talk about tips to boost engagement, let me just quickly switch back to my Twitter account so that I can show you how to access your analytics. If you have never done this before, you're going to want to go to analytics.twitter.com so that you can activate that. But if you have, you can actually go here to your avatar and go down to analytics. So again, if you've never activated it, analytics.twitter.com, and go through those steps. And you have to first have a Twitter account. So make sure you have that. So this opens up your analytics, and this is just like Facebook Insights. So this shows you a lot of data. You've got your 28-day summary at the top. I go straight here into tweets, just like Jennifer showed you with Facebook Insights. She goes directly to posts. I want to find out how my tweets are doing. So over the last 28 days, I've only posted one tweet. So let's go ahead and expand, and you can go back 180 days. So let's see. No, see, I don't have very many tweets, guys. I'm telling you. Let's see if I can get some more. Nope. Okay. So anyways, sorry. I guess I should have programmed this with a few seed tweets so that we could have a few additional ones to look at. But if you recall from my previous screen, I had a few up on the board, so you can see from that period, you can see how many tweets have occurred in that period, and for each one of those tweets, it'll show you the impressions, so the number of times users saw the tweet on Twitter, the engagements, so the number of times people interacted, and that engagement rate, which again is just a simple math calculation. So with this one, 20 people saw the tweet, or, this tweet was seen 20 times, so not necessarily by 20 people. Could have been that 10 people each saw it twice, and nobody's clicked on it yet. So that was 18 hours ago. Again, I don't use Twitter very often, so you're not going to see a high engagement rate on a lot of my stuff, because I don't have a lot of followers. And they don't often consume my content because I don't often post content. So another reason that if you're on social media for your business, you're definitely going to want to post often, or tweet often in the case of Twitter. So you can actually click in on this to view more details. So view tweet activity. And if I were to have engagements, all of those different engagements would show here. All right, and you can export your data, which I think is awesome. So if you have a lot of data from a period of time, you can export it. And it exports into an Excel spreadsheet where you can sort, you can do all sorts of fun calculations about average engagement rate, that sort of thing. So let's go back to PowerPoint. And then this is showing you a tweet that I posted a while ago and what that would have looked like when I expanded the detail about from that analytics screen. So let's talk about boosting engagement. And again, I don't know how many times I can say this, but this is the most important component to social media strategy, is posting content that adds value to your audience. You definitely want to engage with other people's content, so reply to them, retweet their content, and respond to them if they're tweeting and mentioning you in their tweets. That's so great. When you are retweeting someone's content and you want to mention them in that retweet, or you're just starting out a tweet, you want to make sure that you're using the people do it two different ways. If you're starting out a tweet or a retweet with somebody's username, so the @ symbol and their username, you definitely want to make sure that you use either a period or a space. Twitter has been saying that they're going to get rid of this. And the reason that you want to do this is because if you don't use a period or a space before that @ handle, the only people who are going to see that tweet is the people who follow both you and the person that you've mentioned. So if you want everyone to be able to see it, make sure that you use that period or that space in front of the @ symbol. Make sure that you are using hashtags in your tweets. We recommend no more than 2 hashtags per tweet. We have seen studies that show that if you use more than 2 hashtags, the engagement rate tends to go down. We recommend that you use 1 and not 2, but if you need 2, that's fine. Studies have shown that tweets with hashtags are 33% more likely to get retweeted than tweets without them. And then tweets with only 1 hashtag are 69% more likely to get retweeted than those with 2 hashtags. So if your goal is retweeting, engagement, all of that fun stuff, you want to make sure that you're utilizing those hashtags and utilizing them wisely. Anytime you can tag people mention them in your tweets, that's going to be good. We recommend that on all social channels. So make sure that you're taking the time to recognize and mention those corporate sponsors, donors, volunteers, and other key partners. We also really recommend that you, if you're ever interested and you become sort of an avid Twitter user, hosting a Twitter chat can actually be a really popular thing amongst professionals in your industry. So we also recommend that you participate in Twitter chats because that's going to help expose other people to your your account and your knowledge. So anytime you can showcase your knowledge and provide input into a conversation, it's going to be great for you. All right. And if you are interested in participating or hosting a Twitter chat, Tweet Chat is a great resource you might want to check out. And always, always, always use emojis. Emojis are going to get you even more engagement. And let's move it right along. Why isn't this changing slides? There we go. All right. So some additional tips. Make sure that you're uploading pictures and videos over just posting links. People like pictures and videos, so that's going to you're going to see more engagement around those versus link posts. They actually have calculated that tweets with images get 313% more engagement. And when you're creating your own visuals, we've said it before, we recommend putting your logo on them. That way, if they get shared outside of the social platform, it's still got your logo on there. Think about posting some of those before and after photos, tips, facts, personal stories. And again, we always say that it's really important to post if you're gonna post videos, to post them natively, because it's gonna get you significantly more engagement. The same is true on Facebook. So natively means you're uploading it directly to the platform versus posting a link to an outside video hosting platform. So Twitter is going to automatically crop your photo and display it as 440 pixels by 220 pixels. So that's a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're going to want to make sure that your images are sized appropriately. So when you're developing images, remember we talked about in the in-person training, we talked about canva.com and Adobe Spark. Those can help you select the right template for Twitter, making sure that your images are the right size. There's also this tool, Landscape by Sprout Social. We mentioned it in the in-person training. It's a great tool to be able to quickly resize photos for different usage. Make sure that you're pinning tweets to your page. And again, when I showed you, let's do that because I want to make sure that you all know how to do that because that's definitely important. So let's switch back over to Twitter. And let's go home. Oops. We're going to go to view my profile, get out of analytics. So again, I have this pinned tweet here of when the Surgeon General came to Knoxville. But let's say I wanted to pin something else. I can click on this little caret to pin this profile to my page. So that's something that you guys are going to want to do when you can. Here's something I retweeted when Jennifer and I were being interviewed for a project that we did. So you cannot pin other people's tweets. So this is something I retweeted, but you can pin your own to the top. All right, make sure that you're doing a lot of fun things like creating Twitter polls and tagging your location. You can also go live on Twitter through Periscope on the mobile application for Twitter. So think about how you can incorporate some of those different features of Twitter into your strategy. All right, some additional recommendations. This is just one of my big pet peeves is, and Jennifer's also, when you're posting links to different articles, make sure you're telling people why they should click to read more. Don't simply repeat the headline. So this is an example that we used with Project Lazarus, which shows them just repeating the headline. This is what it looks like when it pops up, and this is a missed opportunity to add some additional context. So consider how you can maybe pull out a quote from the story, or tell people exactly why they should click here, why you liked the article, why you think they'll like the article. That way it helps draw in the reader. And again, anytime you are posting a URL, a link to a page, or a story, it's going to be altered to 23 characters, even if the link itself is less than 23 characters. So keep that in mind when you are planning your content. So a few additional recommendations. Make sure that you're mentioning influencers, so people who have a lot of followers, because they're going to see that content as well. Definitely experiment with those hashtags and incorporate a variety of visuals. So I do want to point out before we move on to the next slide, I want to point out and show this example right here. This is how I think you can help add context to stories or tweets when you retweet them, or if you're posting a link post. So this is a retweet here where it says, naloxone is vital. Access to it is essential, but we can't naloxone our way out of this. We need a better plan. So when I retweeted this, I said, so true. This is why we need more funding for prevention programs. It takes time. There are models that are working. So this was my plug for prevention, for public health. So this is me adding context to that conversation. What I could have also done here in this case is to mention Mary Lou. so that everyone who's following her could also see, my addition to the conversation. All right, so before we jump into Snapchat and switch gears, I'm looking at the questions pane, and I don't believe I see any, but let me open it up. If you have any questions about Twitter, go ahead and pop them into the chat box. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any notifications that anybody's typing, so we'll go ahead and we'll jump right into Snapchat if we need to stay on the line longer after we go through Snapchat to answer more Twitter questions. That's absolutely fine. So this, again, is just some general demographics about Snapchat and other auto-delete apps. So like, think WhatsApp, things like that. But again, don't take much stock in this. This I just put in here to point out that the average age of Snapchat users is increasing over time. So it's not just millennials on this channel anymore. So consider how you might want to utilize this if your audience is on it. Let's see, don't have any. Okay, we'll keep moving, no questions. All right, and I am going to show you the app, but I want to tell you a little bit about it before we switch gears and show my phone so that I can give you a walkthrough. Snapchat was actually launched in 2011. It, as of last year, had 100 million users, 6 billion video views each day, and 86% of their users actually fell into the 13 to 37 age range. And some say that the viewing rate of Snapchat content is around 90%, meaning that 90% of content is actually seen. If you remember the figure that I gave for Instagram, they're estimating that only 10% of your content is actually getting seen by your audience. So the potential here is huge. I will say that Snapchat is very similar to Instagram stories, and most people say that Instagram copied Snapchat because it functions just like Instagram stories, where Snapchat is a collection of multiple photos and videos being strung together to create one cohesive story, and it only lives for 24 hours. So that's the time frame in which each snap is available for people to view. So similar to Instagram stories. If you're wondering when the best time to post on Snapchat is, it's late nights. All right, so again, before we jump into the app to actually show you a tutorial of Snapchat, I wanted to showcase a few things here. So we've got these are screenshots that are of a story that I strung together to show you how you might be able to utilize Snapchat, and same with Instagram stories, to actually provide education. So this is a company out of the UK, I believe, called Greenpeace. They are interested in recycling and other green initiatives. So they started out their story by saying, here are 5 habits you can change to make a difference. They put a little graphic in there, and then they started, they showed 5 subsequent photos and videos showing different things that you can do to make a difference. So the first one was avoiding plastic disposable dishes. So and they say wash your appliances. I think that's just a thing because they're not from the United States So that must be a thing that gets said over in the UK. So yes, they recommend washing and reusing as opposed to disposable. Then using reusable bags was sort of their second way. So their story went on to give you 3 additional tips for things that you could do. So think about how you can use this for education in that way. Okay, so let's give you a tutorial. I'm going to switch over to my phone. And let me double check the audience view because I want to make sure that you guys can see this. Yes. Okay, perfect. So I want to first bring up, and wow, let's turn off the light, see if that helps. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I was getting confused because I'm looking at this and I'm like, why is it showing my document cam? Well, that's because when you first open Snapchat, it immediately opens to the camera screen, showing the selfie screen. So it's my phone is essentially looking up to show what's going on here. And let me turn up the brightness slightly so that you guys can see that. All right, so hopefully you can see that. So again, when you first open Snapchat, it's opening up that selfie camera. So I can, sorry, it's hard for you to see. So I can put my finger over here on top of the camera and it's showing up on my screen. So that's showing you what it is. So again, open straight up, just like Instagram stories, to this camera app. You have the option up here. There's a turn the camera button. So you can show, instead of doing the selfie front cam, it's showing the back camera and what's behind my phone, which is essentially my desk. You've got some options to help increase brightness, turn on and off the flash when you take that picture. Up here, you've got a search bar if you want to search for other users or content. And then clicking on, that's called my Bitmoji. So it's a cartoon character of myself. If you are familiar with the Bitmoji app, Snapchat bought Bitmoji. So now you can link your Bitmoji account to Snapchat and utilize your Bitmoji in Snaps, which is really cool and fun. So this is an account that I do consulting work for and help them manage. It's a business in Knoxville, Tennessee. They promote local organizations through Snapchat, through Instagram, and through Facebook. So I help them manage their Snapchat account. So this is sort of your profile screen where you can add friends. If I had an active story, it would appear here. You can also create a new story from this page. You, again, can go through your Bitmojis. Snapchat also awards trophies. If you're interested in this, you can do a little Google searching to find out what all of these mean. So this is basically badges for doing things on Snapchat, such as sending 500 snaps or sending 10 snaps with a video in a row. So you get little trophies as you move forward and do things in Snapchat. So this share option allows you to share your snap code, which is this yellow thing that functions as a QR code. So anybody hovering over it in Snap, if they open up their Snapchat app and show the snap code on their camera, it'll open that up and it'll immediately let you add someone as a friend. This also lets you share your username if you wanted to via email, Facebook, all those fun different ways. So if you share your snap code, you can also save it as an image. This is really cool, and a cool strategy that you might want to employ if you add a Snapchat account is to save that snap code and print it on things. I've seen people print it on like stickers that they've put at the front of their business, their doors, so that people coming into that establishment can add them on Snapchat immediately by opening up their own Snapchat app and scanning that snap code. I've seen people print it on t-shirts, on business cards. You can also add it to your website. So all different fun things that you can do. Share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, cross-promote your content. So here's where you can change lots of different settings. So you can also, while I'm in here, go into filters and lenses, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. But it allows you to actually create your own filter and lens. So I'll show you that in a minute, but just wanted to show you where that option is. This also shows you how many snaps you've sent. Unfortunately, Snapchat doesn't show you how many followers you have. You have to sort of add that up. So let's go back to this main screen right here because I want to show you some of the main functions and features. So you'll notice that little button down here. This is how you actually take your snap. So you tap it to take a picture, you hold it to take a video. All right, so down here, you have a few different options. This is going to bring up all of your chats. So anytime anybody sends you a snap on Snapchat, it's going to appear here. This is also where you can see the status of snaps that you have sent to other people. So you'll notice right here, Allison Cunningham opened up a snap from this account 12 weeks ago. So we can also open this these colored squares indicate that we have new snaps from these people. So we could click on those and we can open them and watch those. You can also add friends from this screen. It allows you to pull them in from your contacts or via snap code. You can also create groups of people. You can now chat live with 32 friends and all create a story together, which I think is just nuts. I can't imagine doing a live chat with 32 people, but if anybody wants to try it, let me know. I'd love to participate and be a part of that, but I think managing that would be a little crazy. So if you want to create a new chat, there's that option up there at the top. So if we want to get out of that again, search for friends, that's up there too. So a lot of different options. So getting out of that, we're going to swipe from right to left. And so we can click on that button to get back there, or we can swipe from left to right. So just remember that the chat, all of your snaps from people here is on the left. So to get there, you swipe from left to right. Conversely, we've got something over here. So we can either click on this button to get to our Discover tab, which is actually where they've housed all of the stories from your friends and any people that you subscribe to. And then these are snaps that Snapchat just thinks that you would be interested in. So these are just sort of an algorithmic thing. So again, to get to the Discover tab, you can either click here on this little icon, or you can swipe from right to left. So remember, this button's on the right, so swipe from right to left to get there. So two different ways to sort of access those various places within the Snapchat app. So I can show you, let's see, let's open up somebody's, Knoxville Police Department. Okay, there, I follow them on Snapchat, so let's see what they are posting. We can watch their story. So they're showing their new cars. You notice that they put a little Knoxville filter at the bottom, and that's called a geo filter, which I'll explain in a moment. And that's just repeating. Okay, so that was their one little snap. So they didn't have a story or anything like that. I am, if you want, I I'm going to switch accounts in just a second so that I can actually post some snaps and show you those things. I don't want to do it on this account, but I did want to open up memories so I can show you some stories that I've done on this account so you can see sort of what's possible. And again, the point of this business is to promote other local businesses. So we use a lot of the fun Snapchat tools to do that and create stories for each individual business. So to get to memories, you click there underneath the little circle, and that's going to open up all your memories. If you want to look at individual stories that you've created from any time period, if you want to open up your camera roll, you can see this is a picture. I know it looks terrible from here, but that's a picture of a meatloaf. I sent it to my husband to say, this is what's for dinner the other night. So that is meatloaf. It actually was very appetizing despite how this picture looks. But this is where you can access some of the things from your camera roll to actually upload and create a snap from those pictures and videos. So let's go back to stories because I want to show you a story. Let's see, who do we want to feature on here? All right, so I did a story from a dentist office, about a dentist office in Knoxville to promote them. So that's this story. So I will go ahead and play this through so you can see the different things that I did.
Hey guys, we're back at Dr. Coulter's office, and I can't wait to show you what we have in store. We're going to take you around the office, and then we're going to do a really fun Q&A with the doctor and staff. Hey guys, we're back at Dr.
And I'm just tapping to advance so you don't have to watch the replay. So you can see we did a fast motion treatment to this snap. So this office was like a spa. They had massaging chairs, televisions on the ceiling, and then they would allow you to do paraffin hand wax, which was amazing in my opinion. I've never been to a dentist like that. So you can see I incorporated my Bitmoji into this. And this is, you'll get a swag bag. So we did the fast motion and played it in a loop. So it's similar to Boomerang if you are an Instagram person, but Snapchat doesn't have Boomerang. So this was my recreation of that. We added a little apple because, you know, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So they also offer optional nitrous oxide for those who are a little or a lot anxious about dental work. So then we get into the frequently asked questions segment. So this is sort of a way that, you know, we were incorporating some of the different features of Snapchat using the Bitmoji, using still photos versus videos.
Don't be embarrassed. We see all kinds of people and all kinds of teeth, and it won't get better until you come see us.
What do I do if my tooth falls out?
Put it in a cup of milk, get to the dental office in 30 minutes flat.
Question, what's the weirdest thing you've seen while doing a cleaning? So again, we're trying to make it fun and entertaining.
A lot of times when I'm cleaning teeth, I'll pull out popcorn or chicken, and I ask people when's the last time they ate it, and they don't remember. So people need to floss their teeth.
So fun and entertaining, but also educational. So do at-home whitening solutions like charcoal toothpaste and peroxide work?
Don't risk it. Just come get your teeth professionally whitened. $80 our take-home kit.
Okay, so that was the story that I did for them. I'm going to go ahead and log out of this account and log into my personal account so that we can create some snaps together and I can show you all of the different features of Snapchat. But I hope that gave you an idea of how you might be able to utilize Snapchat and also Instagram stories to create some really great fun and educational content. And Snapchat is a younger audience, so you know there is some sort of a fun, lighthearted value to it. Just like Instagram stories, it's a little bit more relaxed. You don't have to be as polished. People are expecting some of that fun. So again, when you open up your Snapchat, it's going to open right up to the camera screen, the selfie screen. So if we wanted to, let's go ahead and turn it around so we've got a solid background. Let's take a snap. So we tapped that button down at the bottom, that circle. And just like with Instagram stories, it gives us a lot of options here. And like I said, this was created first. So Instagram stories is sort of always trying to, anytime Snapchat comes up with something, I swear Instagram copies it and tries to one-up them. So it's really interesting. If you're a user of both, you'll notice this. And I always find it comical. Okay, so you have your option to add text. And what I love here on Snapchat is they've allowed the opportunity to add multiple text boxes. That wasn't something you were always able to do. So I can do hi in big text, and they also changed the different font options, which is really fun. So you can say hi, you can change the color, and then I can go back and I can add another text box. So the opposite of hi is bye. All right, so you get the picture. You can expand just like with Instagram stories. So lots of fun things that you can do. You can draw. If you pull all the way down, you can get black. If you go all the way up, you get white. And then you have any number of options within there. You also have, if you click on that little heart, you also have little emojis that you can draw with, which is kind of fun. So we can do fire. We can do little stars. So you can, if you wanted to erase things, you use this little back button. And to get out, you click on the pencil again. You also have stickers, just like with Instagram. So lots of fun things if you wanted to do. They've got GIFs in here too. So you can go to GIFs and it pulls up all of the GIFs that are trending from Giphy, or you can search for something in particular. If you're trying to get the point across that something's sad, you might type sad here to see what comes up, or happy, I don't know, any number of words. But you've got fun stickers in here. At the bottom, you can see some different options. So you see the clock here for recent things that you've used. These are recent stickers that I've used in my Snap, so I tend to use a lot of emojis. This is just a lot of different stickers that Snapchat has put in here. You can actually create your own sticker, which is pretty cool. So if you noticed in that dentist segment, I created a sticker of their logo and used it in their snaps, which is really cool. Here's where you can add your Bitmoji. I'll create that so that you can, I'll link it again. I unlinked it a moment ago because you can only have your Bitmoji linked to one account, which is kind of a bummer. But here's where if you link it, you can see all of the different characters, little Bitmoji characters that you can put into your snap. So this is where you can add a lot of personality, and I really like that. You also have all the different emojis that you can pop in there. So lots of different things that you can do to be creative. You can also, this is not an option unless you have a large number of users on Instagram. You can also add a URL to your snap. So I did this a lot of times when I was going out and doing Snapchat stories of businesses. I would add their URL to several of the snaps. That way, if somebody was watching the story, they could easily go to the website. And again, that's something that you can't do unless you have a large number of followers. I believe it's 10,000 on Instagram. I'd have to double check my notes and don't quote me on that. But and then you can change the time limit on how long somebody gets to view that snap. So if you have it on unlimited, the only way that they can move on to the next snap is by tapping the screen. So you also have the option here to save your snap, which is really cool. Or you can immediately add your story, or you can send it to your story or any number of people. Do want to show you something cool that you can do, and let's see if it'll bring it up. So if you tap here on the screen, it'll bring up a bunch of different what Snapchat calls lenses. So this is where you see the puppy ears on people and all of the different fun glasses. It's only going to show up if there's a face in there. So right now they're not going to show up, but play around with that. And again, to get there, you're going to tap, and they've got all this fun augmented reality stuff, which is neat. But you tap on the screen to get to those, tap and hold, and then they pop up. So play around with those. The other thing that I wanted to show you is the filters. So those were lenses. So those go on top of your face in your snaps. So now these are filters that I'm showing you, and some are geo filters because they are connected to a specific location. And the way that you get to those is you take a snap and then you're going to swipe. So this is a color filter that we can add. If we go a little further, here's a geotagged location. So this is a park that's near my house here in Minnesota, Wings Over Whites Park. Wake Up and Be Awesome. That's probably not tagged to any specific location. This is not tagged to any specific location, but now you're seeing some that are. So these are filters that anybody in a specific area can create and submit to Snapchat to hopefully get on here. And anybody in this location that they select, so when they created this, they probably selected all of Mankato, Minnesota, because I use this all over the city. Anytime anybody is in Mankato, this will appear as an option for them to add to their snaps. You can also, what's really cool as a brand, you can create your own geo filter. So you can do the design, and remember I showed you where that option was within settings to go through that. You can create your own for any specific event. So let's say there's Red Ribbon Week, maybe prom's going on. You want to create some sort of geo filter to remind people that they shouldn't drink and drive, prom promise, that sort of thing. So you can create your own geo filter for that event and set it to only show up in when people are in a certain location and using Snapchat in that location, and you could set it for a period of time. And some of these filters, depending on your options, can be set or purchased. Some of these filters can be purchased depending on your options, how much of an area you want to cover, how long you want to cover it for. They can be as cheap as $5. So really great opportunity to brand some of your content and do fun events. So you can see, I keep swiping, there's all these fun different options. Some of these are sponsored, like this one is Scrubbing Bubbles Wednesday. So yeah, lots of different fun options. People love adding these to their snaps, getting really creative. Okay, so that is Snapchat in a nutshell. Let's go back to show the PowerPoint because I have a few points that I want to make before we wrap things up today. So let's go back. There we go. Okay. So some ways to actually increase your engagement on Snapchat. Downloading your snaps. Then you can tweet, post them on Facebook or share on other channels. I showed you how to do that, how to download. So that's a way to cross promote. Identify influencers in your community. Maybe you have a student in your student coalition group who is a big Snapchat user, has a lot of friends. Ask them to promote your account by mentioning your Snapchat username in their snaps. Use that snap code I showed you to promote your account. Create stories. Create those on-demand geo-filters. And you can actually create custom stories to allow other people to add to that story. So you will have noticed when I went to post the snap, where on that screen I showed you where you could add it to your story or send it to any number of people. If you go back to that screen, you'll look at right underneath the top where it says My Story, there's an Our Story option. This is a really cool feature because you can create a group story that anyone in a specific area can add to. So I did this for I Love Local. They had a big festival. It was called Local Knox Fest. So they invited a whole bunch of local vendors to come to this area and share their products. And it was just a big fun festival that lasted 4 hours. So I created a story and allowed anybody who was using their Snapchat account in that vicinity to add to that story. And then I was able to download that whole story that had contributors from all over that event. And we were able to share that on other channels, which was a really cool thing. So it's a way to get user-generated content, and people love to be involved in those sort of things. So you definitely want to make sure that people know that you're doing that at an event so that they can add to that story. And if they are in that location, they'll see it as an option to add to that story when they go to post their own snaps. Something I did not show you, I should definitely go back, is Snap Map. So you can actually share your location in Snap Map, and before we end, I'll show you that because that usually gets people derailed. But this is something that you can do so that anytime anybody goes to visit the Snap Map to look at snaps that are happening around them, they can find your content. And this is only if you're sharing your location via Snap Map, and I'll show you how to do that before we end. But think about creative ways where you can actually invite interaction. So something that I've done previously is there's a great restaurant in Knoxville called Petro's. They're a locally owned business, and there was this controversy of how to eat your Petro, whether it be with a spoon or a fork. So when we were doing their story, I invited people. I said, okay, we're gonna let you vote on how you should eat a Petro. So I'm going to show you a snap of a spoon, and if you eat your Petro with a spoon, I want you to take a screenshot of the spoon snap. If you eat your Petro with a fork, I want you to take a screenshot of the fork snap. And Snapchat is actually recording how many screenshots you get on each individual snap. So this is something that you can actually go back in to your Snapchat story and look at those analytics to find that information. So that's a really fun way to get people engaged with your snaps. You can ask people to respond to questions because they can actually reply to your snaps. So you can do a Q&A, you can do quizzes. So this is a really fun interactive, a fun way to get people to interact. If you want to see more ideas, I really recommend that you follow Experian. They are the credit monitoring bureau, but they have a Snapchat account that they use to educate young adults and teenagers on how to manage their finances in a responsible manner. So they do a lot of really fun interactive things on their Snapchat channel. So again, Experian is somebody I recommend following to see how to do that really well. And again, there's no analytics platform on Snapchat. When I go back in here to show you the Snap Map, I'll show you where you can find this information, but you can see if you go in to look at each individual snap, within your story. You can see how many people viewed it, how many people have taken screenshots, how many people have sent it to others, if there are any comments. So these are all things that you can record because, again, there is not a, unfortunately, not a analytics platform actually built into Snapchat. So before we close, and again, if you have questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box. But I want to show you Snap Map and how to get to that. And then I will show you how to access your analytics because those are things I forgot. So Snap Map, you can pull down. So swipe from top to bottom and it pulls up a search tab. It also pulls up the Snap Map here. The other thing that you can do is pinch your screen. So it's going to show the entire map of where you are. I have this little ghost symbol on top of my Bitmoji, meaning I am not sharing my location. I can make changes to that if I want to, but I definitely don't want to. I want to stay in ghost mode because I don't want everybody to see me. Because if I share my location, that means that anytime I post a snap, people who are in Mankato or actually anywhere in the world can access the Snap Map to be able to see my snaps. So I'll show you what this looks like. So you notice these little heat maps here. So if I click on those, I see snaps from other people that I'm not following, that I don't know, that are snapping in that location. So I can also, this is why I think Snap Maps is kind of creepy. You can also scroll out. Looks like there's a lot happening around Orlando, a lot going on at Magic Kingdom. So I can click here and look at all these snaps from people in that area. So I don't know these people, but they're sharing their snaps with the world. So there's a little, people always get a little freaked out when they see this. But this is an opportunity for you guys. If you are snapping about an event and you want more people to be able to see it, this will open it up to more than just people who are following you and following your snaps. So that's the Snap Map. And again, you can turn that location on, pinch, swipe from top to bottom. And then if you want to look at your story analytics, you go right back up here to that little circle. It's going to open up your profile again, and you come down here to my story and you click on these three dots. Click on the three dots if you want to change the privacy settings. But if you want to expand to look at each of the different snaps, you can tap on my story, and for each individual segment on this long video, you can see the number of people who viewed that particular snap. Again, this is my personal account. I don't have a lot of friends and followers, but you can click on it if you want to see more information about who exactly it was that viewed that snap, and any other metrics are going to be up here at the top. So nobody sent that snap to other people, nobody screenshotted it. And then here's an option to actually delete that individual snap or save that individual snap. So that is Snapchat. I am looking right now to see if there are any questions. So again, feel free to type any questions into the box, and I will stay on to answer any of those questions for as long as you guys have them. But if you don't have questions, I'll go ahead and say that we've reached the end of this webinar. So if you think of anything, you can always send me an email, kristen.matson@oru.org. I'm happy to answer your questions, after this if you need. But thank you guys for hanging on, and make sure that you're registered for webinar number 3, which is this time next week with Jennifer, who and a couple special guests who are going to be talking about Facebook advertising. So thank you all for hanging on. I'll stand by. If there are any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, raise your hand, and I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now, and thank you guys so much.